Welcome to Running a Fever, episode 102. Today, we're going to talk about adaptation. Adapt and survive. Adapt and thrive. My name is Michael Davis, and in my 53rd year on this earth, I lost over 70 pounds, dropped my waist size 10 plus inches, lowered my blood pressure, increased my energy, increased my muscle mass, just changed my entire life. I did it because I started loving my life enough to make it last as long as possible, and that's what I'm still doing today, folks. And I hope you love your life that much. If not, I want you to start. Well, of course, it's another beautiful day. You got to start out every day like that. Every day recognizing the beauty of life. And I just saw two creatures run across the trail. I think it was two creatures, it looked like to me. It's still very dark. I got up at my usual time today, which is 4:45. Monday through Friday, my usual time. It is Saturday morning. But it's still dark, so it's kind of hard to see a creature that is not lighted in any way. Morning! Kind of cool today. We're going into the noisiest part of the trail. We're all familiar with it. Parked here many times, but today I did not. Started elsewhere. Pretty cool this morning. It was in the 40s as I started my adventure. And so I've got on my usual attire on the bottom, which I wore throughout the summer, compression tights and shorts. On the top now, instead of a t-shirt, I am wearing one of my long sleeve compression shirts and my Red Sox 2009 playoffs hoodie. It is now 2018, which is 9 years later, and the 100th anniversary of the 1918 World Series, which the Boston Red Sox won. I'm trying to remember who they played in 1918. I think it was Chicago Cubs. In fact, I'm pretty sure it was, because there was in recent years a game played, or series, in Fenway Park. It was the first time that the Chicago Cubs had played there since the 1918 World Series. The Red Sox are thankfully in the World Series. Fortunately, in the World Series this year, or not in the World Series, they're in the playoffs. They're starting the American League Championship Series against Houston tonight, and I hope to be watching some of that. Red Sox they have the best record in baseball, and they are taking an unconventional strategy, and they have adapted because this allows them to do things that, I mean, it's amazing. You think that after I don't know, 150 years, that baseball would be pretty much settled in its strategy, at least, unless the rules change. Now, the rules do change, but this strategy is really more of a reaction. You usually see what's called the small ball strategy in teams that do not have big money, heavy hitting players. Because they have to. They have to get more bases on fewer big hits, right? So they have to steal bases. They have to make all the double plays. They have to do all these little fundamental things that really are just fundamental to baseball. And they also have to be aggressive. Just like if you have no money and you need money and you've got nothing to lose, you can be aggressive in the stock market as well. And in life, people who are not well established are more aggressive. They can afford to be more aggressive. They have less to lose. In this case, not the case. Red Sox had the best record in baseball. They just beat the Yankees 3 out of 4 games, I guess. It was a 5-game series and they won best of 5, but they took 4 games to do it. Yankees took 1 in Fenway Park. It's always good to beat the Yankees. Yankees and Lakers. Anybody that plays against the Yankees or against the Lakers, I'm rooting for. And they've got big money hitters. I mean, they're one of the biggest spending baseball clubs in the major leagues, especially considering they're not in New York or Los Angeles or Chicago. So why are they taking this aggressive strategy? Well, it works. Nobody expects you to do it. And you don't have, and this is an amazing thing that you're not worried about having a starting pitcher to last, 7 innings, and then, pitch again maybe 3 days later. If your starting pitcher starts to struggle in the least bit, you're not going to wait and see what happens. Just came upon a child's bicycle. Nobody around. So that's what they're doing now. It's not just the Red Sox that are doing it. It's pretty common everywhere now in the playoffs. And they're talking about it. It's relatively new because they're talking about it. And I haven't seen it before. I haven't probably watched the playoffs. I only watch when the Red Sox are in the playoffs. Pretty much, or sometimes when the Yankees are there because I really want them to lose. And so, I noticed this a few years ago that in the playoffs, you often had as many or more pitchers on the roster as you did position players and designated hitters. You've got 12 or 13 pitchers. And in a single game, you would use a starting pitcher, and if you went 7 innings, you'd have a setup man and a closer, depending on the score. 3 pitchers in a game. Now, if the starting pitcher only lasted 5 innings, then you might have 4 pitchers you'd use in a game. And in the old days of baseball, you'd only have 1 no matter what. That had become the game. And especially since the designated hitter came in the game, and you had pitchers who were only concerned with pitching. But now, you might have 5 pitchers in the game. If the guy goes 3 innings, sometimes maybe even less than that, you might have another starter come in, and pitch 2 innings. Then you'd have the usual crowd of relievers at the end. That's why some teams like the Yankees have several guys who have spent their career in the closing position where you're only expected to get 3 outs for an entire game, and you may play every night trying to do that. You can be expected to play any night, to come in for 1 inning. Why has this happened? Adaptation. If you want to have a long career at anything, you have to adapt. As you learn more about yourself and others, you adapt, adjusting to those realities. The sun is not fully up, but it's light enough that I can see everything around me and everything on the road. So I'm adapting by taking my Cyclops light, putting it in my pocket, to save the battery and make my head a little more comfortable. Got my hood down because I'm warmed up and I've adapted to the warmed state of my body. This will allow me better cooling, more efficient operation of my physical plant. The Red Sox have adapted, and especially it's significant, especially to see a team that's so high powered to take this strategy. You would describe this attitude as scrappy if it were another team that maybe didn't have as much money, that maybe just didn't get lucky in the draft, or they weren't able to train and bring up the kind of players that they originally received, and they weren't able to buy the highest price, best players. But this isn't the Red Sox. They're acting like a scrappy team, and it's a season-long strategy. The manager is Alex Cora, who has played for the Red Sox. I remember seeing him when I was watching the Red Sox back in the, 15 years ago or so. I lived in Boston, or in the area, Massachusetts. He's taken this strategy for the entire season, and he came out with the best record in baseball. And you're playing teams that you're going to play, teams in your division, you're going to play 20 times a year, something like that. Red Sox play the Yankees 20 times a year. They're going to know all your moves. I mean, they're just going to know. But, if you have a big hitter that's been a big hitter for 10 years, like David Ortiz, whose number has now been retired for the Red Sox, and hit the most home runs of any Major League Baseball player in his final year. That guy's a known quantity. And if your manager has been playing him that way the whole time, you're going to know. How would you expect a strategy like you have now? But they've had 20 games to figure out that Alex Cora is using this strategy for the Boston Red Sox. Scrappy, aggressive, base stealing, pitcher switching strategy. Anything to win. And now it's come down to each individual game. You're not going to try to fix that player if he's a big hitter and he's got a bad wheel. It's not going to feel very good. You're going to take him out, put a new guy in. The other side switches pitchers after 3 innings from a right-hander to a left-hander. You're going to take out your left-handers and put your right-handers in. Aggressive, adaptive. You can only do this if you know your team very well. You know their stats, you know their strengths, you know their weaknesses. Adaptation has helped me in the past and other people that I know. And sometimes it's just radical. People don't expect this. Someone that I knew professionally, in a former profession that I had, a very wise man, in his 60s and very fit, played racquetball all the time. And I was talking to him about that because I used to play squash and I really loved the game until my right arm shoulder started giving me trouble. It was very painful to play squash. Well, his immediate response was, why don't you just try playing with your left hand? So simple. So simple. Why did I never think of that? I used to have a roommate who was into guns, and he would go skeet shooting, right? Had all these shotguns and pistols and stuff, and he was just into it. So he'd go out shooting and didn't want to go alone, so he'd take me and our other roommate out, and we'd shoot all kinds of cool weapons, and went skeet shooting one time, and I was shooting this little 16 gauge, I think it was, and I kept telling him, I just can't, I don't know, for some reason I knew at that time I'd started to realize that one of my eyes was not as good as the other. And it happened to be my left eye. It was better than my right eye. Well, as a right-hander, I'd always shot right-handed. He said, well, why don't you shoot left-handed? Again, I'm just dumbfounded. Why didn't I think of this before? And I switched and put that shotgun on my left shoulder, and boy, didn't I shoot a lot better. Adaptation. Don't give up. Adapt. Here's the key. You only think of these things when they're ancillary to your primary goal. If you're a writer and your goal is to write, and you lose all your fingers, you can start typing with your nose or dictating, pressing those record buttons with your toes. I had a cousin named Gloria. I didn't know her very well, but she had cerebral palsy, CP. She had CP her whole life. Every time I saw her, she was in a wheelchair, and I really usually could not even understand what she was saying. But she was an amazing poet. She typed her poems and everything else she wrote with a just little kind of stick that she strapped to her forehead, and she would use her head to type with. Her head was probably the most controllable part of her body. The rest was controlled by the disease. And she wrote great poetry, and hopefully, I don't know if I have any of it. I want to find some. If I find some before I publish this episode, I'll put it on the blog. I started a podcast called Running a Fever, and I started trying to run, and I hurt my knee, and running wasn't safe for me, and in fact, I've not run since then, really. Still have a little trouble with the knee, still hope to work that out someday, but I kept on doing the podcast, and I kept on exercising. I just walked instead of running. That's not a big adaptation. But that's my most recent example. Know yourself and have a purpose. Morning, sir. Just passed a guy walking down the trail with one of those walkers that has wheels on it. And he's just walking along. He's adapted to make sure he can still exercise. He's nowhere near a parking lot, folks. This guy is not just tottering around. He's a serious guy about his health. Examples about that are all around you. And I heard a story by Zig Ziglar. Talked about a man who was born with no legs. When he first met the guy, he was like drinking a cup of coffee with his feet or something. I'm sorry, no arms. No arms. So he's drinking a cup of coffee with his feet or eating a bowl of cereal, something, I don't know. Starting when he was, I guess, 2 years old, his mother forbade his brothers to help him in any way. She made him do everything himself and find a way to do it. The guy was 2 years old. He could learn, he could adapt. He could figure out how to do things, how to survive. And only when he was in danger would she come in and help him. Right. One time he was having a little pity party, he said, Zig Ziglar said. This young man, and probably about 12 years old or so. The only thing his mother did was show him a newspaper article. And it was an article about a little girl who had been born with no arms and no legs. Never again did this man pity himself. He became a shockingly, amazingly successful man. Shouldn't be shocking, really. He learned to adapt at an early age. And he was a speaker, and actually, I think, wound up at one of Ziglar's seminars, and he usually does not invite outside speakers to his seminars, or didn't. Stories like this all around you. I just saw a guy right back there as I was recording this and walking along the trail. Look for those. Look for those models and copy them. Get to know yourself, know your strengths, know your weaknesses. Don't bemoan your weaknesses. They are opportunities for you to improve and adapt and thrive. If you don't have the fever, go out and get it. If you got it, keep it till next time. I will talk to you next time. I am Michael Davis. This is Running a Fever.
This is the Padua Podcast Network. PaduaMedia.com.